Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. It's Wednesday, midweek, college football season, so you know what that means. Joining us tonight on the show will be official Format Podcast college football analyst Ryan Lankford to give us his take on what's going on, talk about the main stories in the sport that he loves so much and we all love so much, and of course, talk about the week that was and the week to come. But before we get to that, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, and we should come right up. You can subscribe right there. If you enjoy the content, please give us that 5-star review or give us that thumbs up. And make sure you leave a comment, whether that's on your audio platform or on YouTube. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Bruce, Ryan Lankford, the Format Podcast, college football. Let's go. And here we go. Of course, back on another episode of Format Podcast is my main man, Ryan Lankford, former. We gonna go through the thing. Definitely, definitely former Fighting Illini. That's why we love to ask him those questions about the Big Ten. And of course, former Indianapolis Colt, former Saskatchewan Rough Rider, former Ottawa Red Black, former he's got one more in there somewhere. I can't remember it.
Winnipeg
Winnipeg
and
Blue
BC
Bomber
Lion.
and
Yep,
BC
BC
Lion.
Lion.
There
Yep.
we go. There we go. So Ryan knows his football, and that's why we have him here. We love to talk to him and get his take on things, man. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well.
Outstanding, outstanding. Great to have you back as always, man. But let's get right to it, man. So um normally if you're here and you're listening to the show or you watch on YouTube every week, normally we kind of start with a wrap up of the previous weekend's games, but I think we kind of push that back a little bit. The first thing we want to get to last night, well, depending on when you're listening, but last night, which would be Tuesday the 31st, Halloween, the college football playoff released their first official rankings of the season, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Definitely got some results I didn't expect, but when you break them down, I kind of got an idea more of how they ended up where they ended up. So I can't be, too upset about it.
hmm
So we can take a look at those real quick. And I think it's really interesting the way those shook out. And obviously a lot of people didn't expect for Ohio State to end up being number one in the
Right.
first ranking. What did you think of that?
Um, I was a little shocked too. I think I thought Georgia or someone else. But
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State's playing great ball. Ohio State looks good. They're a program. But I don't know if one was there. Now, it's also to me, it's still kind of early, right? There's still some
Yes,
big games on the schedule.
absolutely.
There's still some things that can happen where, it could get shaken or switched up. But they made it interesting by making them number one.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And I don't know if prior to that being released, I would have thought of them as number one, but
Mhm.
they have a couple of the best wins in the country, and obviously they beat Notre Dame literally at the last second,
Mhm. Mhm.
about a month and a half ago, at Notre Dame. That was a big win, and of
Mhm.
course they beat Penn State in that defensive slugfest, which I gotta say, in this era of football, sometimes it's nice to throw back and see those great defensive matchups because those are, like we talk about, those are a function of physicality and enforcing your
Right.
will, and also the chess match. Who's going to make the mistake or who's going to be able to make the play offensively that's going to crack through uh, the defense of the opposition. So it was kind of cool to see. So Ohio State had two of the biggest wins of the year, and I guess at least for this first ranking, it makes sense to kind of stick them where you
Mhm.
stuck them.
Mhm.
Georgia, I don't know how I felt about Georgia at number two. I'll just give my quick thoughts about that, and then you can go. Um, you know me. Excuse me. I always talk about the SEC bias, and
Mhm.
I think Georgia has a strength of schedule of like 108th in the country so far.
Mhm.
They haven't really played much of anyone. I think they're getting a lot of credit, obviously, for being the defending national champion. Still a very
Mhm.
good team. We know how good they are, but
Mhm.
should they have been number two in the college football playoff rankings?
I actually thought they were going to be one personally.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's early, and I think I also don't put a lot of weight on the first ones going out
Hmm.
because there is a lot of games left. Georgia still has a decent schedule that they got to go against. Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Those are going to be some games that are hopefully should test them and really see where it's all gonna pan out in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it is going to be interesting, especially depending on who ends up coming out of the SEC West. Got a huge
Hmm.
showdown this week. Alabama and LSU. I think it's in Tuscaloosa.
Yep.
And so, both of those teams would likely be a very stiff test in the AFC in the
Hmm.
right in the SEC championship game against what's likely going to be Georgia. I'm pretty sure
Hmm.
it's going to be Georgia. I don't think anybody could catch them at this point. But
Yep.
that's going to be a very stiff test. So uh, definitely should be interesting. And that leads to another interesting situation we'll get to later where if LSU can run the table here, can they be the first team to get in with 2 losses? So we'll come
Mm.
back around to that. Um,
Mm.
okay, so Michigan, ranked number 3. And as I understand it, one of the things I listened to a ton of college football stuff. I'm
Hmm.
sure you're aware of that, but one of the things that I heard is that the committee kind of looks at this game control metric, which is basically style points, how much you dominate your opposition, and
Hmm.
Michigan has utterly and completely done that. Now that said, we just talked about Georgia having I think the one away strength of schedule in the country. Michigan is
Hmm.
111. So
Mm.
they haven't
Mm.
played anyone yet, but they have a very strong end to the season. I think they still have Penn State, they still have Maryland, of course, they still have the
Hmm.
game with Ohio State. So
Hmm.
if they can get through that unscathed, then I can't see how they don't end up being number 1 in the final college football playoff poll. Um, your thoughts? How good is Michigan? Do you think that they are ranked correctly in this opening poll? And do you think, even with everything that's going on up there, you think they have a legit chance to win a national championship?
Yes. I really agree with everything that you just said, what they got left, how that can kind of shape and really prove who they are as a team. I think also which we always overlook is that the belief, right? In that locker room, especially with all the negativity that's going around right now with the alleged play calling and all those things. As a former player, I know that that's a little extra glue, a little extra something to kind of come together and play. So it's going to be interesting how it shapes up. I think they do have a pretty decent schedule, and if they do come out on top, no question they should be the number one team in the country.
So with that said, Michigan, outstanding team so far, been completely dominating the opposition. How much of it is this lack of properly being tested early in the season? And how much of it is they're that good? Because obviously, you know this, when you're playing a
Hmm.
team that's not as good as you, they're doing what you're supposed to do to a team that's not as good as you. But
Hmm.
where are you in terms of that balance of, okay, they're playing nobodies versus they're really, really good, and that's why they're able to do this?
That's a great question. And I think it comes down to how they're showing up on film. I think you can always have the pitch of strength of schedule. I think that
Mm-hmm.
is a certain metric that you gotta measure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also think um, how the team plays together, that type of are they dominating in all phases, week in, week out? Are they putting up big points? And I don't have their exact numbers right now, but I do know the games that I have watched Michigan, they play very, very well. They seem physical. They're
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I mean, they
Yeah.
make plays when I need to make plays. And
Mm-hmm.
if it comes down to a chess match game, they can win those. I mean, they got good play callers. That it seems like they know how to move the ball, how to do what they need to do to win games. Clearly, I mean, if they haven't lost one yet.
Right, right. So let me ask you this. So we look at Michigan and we see what they are able to do. Do you find it interesting that we have teams in Michigan, in Ohio State, in now
Mhm.
Oregon, to a lower level Utah, teams that are really building in the SEC model to be able to compete with that in the event that they should, get an opportunity at the playoff?
Do I see them? Is your question they're trying to play like SEC
Well,
teams, or what do you think? What are you saying here?
play. play like them, as well as build teams in that model, in
Right.
terms of physically, in terms of body style. Because, for instance,
Yeah.
Oregon, right? Even when they
Hmm.
were under Chip Kelly and they were kind of at their best, they they didn't look like this Oregon looks, right?
Hmm.
Like I did hear
Hmm.
that Chip Kelly looked for certain measurables on his defensive tackles, and I get that.
Hmm.
Defensive tackles can't
Hmm.
be small guys, but for the most part, there were a lot of small, slim, scat back type guys,
Hmm.
quick receivers,
Hmm.
really not super bulky. But Dan Lanning has done the opposite, him obviously coming from Georgia and him building his team in the model of SEC in terms of body type and the play
Hmm.
style. Do you think that's kind of interesting that we're seeing teams all over the country really trying to follow that model now in order to have
Yeah, and
success?
yes, and I think it's deeper than the model. I think it's more so the coach's philosophy.
Mm,
A new coach comes in, he's going to bring in his assistant coaches. He's going to bring in the strength staff that he wants, and usually that strength staff is going to resemble the type of play that you guys want to have, right?
mm-hmm, true.
Um, Zook came in when I went to Illinois. We had Lou, who we loved Lou, and we did a lot of powerlifting, and we were
Mm-hmm.
that bigger team coming from the University of Florida, from
Right,
the SEC
right.
mentality. We had players, we were recruiting high. We had that look. Now, could we have played in the SEC? I'm gonna say absolutely we could have. That's what I'm gonna say because I was there.
Right, right,
But
right.
obviously we don't know. Later on, Tim Beckman came in. Beckman came from the MAC, different type of ball at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So more zone screen, just a little bit different type of body started then coming into the program because of his philosophy and how he wanted to do things, right?
Okay.
So I think that philosophy really comes into play in how they're recruiting. And then again, we got to add in the transfer portal. People can come in and out immediately, and that's going to add a new level of things too. So
Mm-hmm.
philosophy, the freedom, and that's kind of what success is looking like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Football, that's the kind of the model teams that are making it to win the national championship and sending guys to the NFL. So I think that's why
Mm.
you can kind of feel that shift, if you will.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it didn't even occur to me that you would have played for Ron Zook. And it's funny because now that you say that, it makes me think about when Urban Meyer got to Ohio State. And don't get me
There you
wrong,
go.
Ohio State is obviously, they've
Hmm.
been one of the elite programs for a long time now, but he also changed that body type, changed that, that style of play. Obviously,
Hmm.
coming from the SEC and having recruiting inroads down there and all that, and grabbing those type of
Hmm.
guys and that type of strength and conditioning program. So yeah, no, I
Hmm.
totally get it. Totally get it.
Hmm.
I like
And
that.
then the game changes over time. Players are changing. Like the type
Mm-hmm.
of player that's coming out of high school this year
Mm-hmm.
is could be drastically different than the type of high school players that were coming out when I was playing.
Right.
Just technology,
Yeah.
training. There wasn't a lot of 7-on-7s. There wasn't a lot
Mm-hmm.
of this film. There wasn't a lot of getting personal trainers. Now, some guys were doing it, the elite ones, but now it's become the standard, which is
Right.
producing a different athlete, producing a different game, and changing the scope of football. There was no targeting back in the day, right? Now
Right.
they're doing
Right.
that to protect people because athletes are getting better, people are
Mm-hmm.
training, and the game is shifting. Um, in my mind.
I got you. Personally, I think the targeting is that whole, err
Yeah, I
on the
know
side of
everybody.
safety, and because if you notice, every time there's a big hit, like a flag comes out, and it's like
Yeah, it's
it
it's
might have just
getting
been, yeah, it might have just been a
it's getting
clean
rough.
big hit, but like I think they're taught, big hit, throw the flag. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it is what
Hmm.
it is.
Hmm.
Okay, so going through, I'm gonna run through the rest of the rankings.
Okay.
And then I'll kind of ask you if there's any that surprised you. So, all right, let's start from one: Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Penn State, Missouri, Louisville, LSU, Notre Dame, Oregon State, Tennessee, Utah, UCLA, USC, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Tulane, Air Force.
Mm. Okay,
Anything
Air
stand
Force.
out to you?
Air Force. I actually didn't know Air Force was up there.
Yeah, they're
They
one of the
they
best
are
group
they
of five
undefeated. They're
teams.
undefeated this year. They
I
might
believe
be
so.
still.
I believe they're still
Yeah,
undefeated. Yeah.
yeah, that's cool.
Hmm. So they're looking at they keeping on
Nothing.
going. They're looking at a New Year's Six.
Yeah, 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 yeah. nothing really. And again, it's still in my mind, still
Right.
early. It
Right.
still can be
Oh yeah.
some movement. Someone do two goose eggs out there, don't win
Oh
a
yeah.
game, that could
Right.
flip the whole thing around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting. There's some good football and some good
Hmm.
games lined up towards the end that are gonna
Yeah. Help it all
the
shake
weight
out.
of the weight of the game is going to be more or less because of what the standings are doing.
Right. So I think I find it interesting how much respect that the committee seems to have for Oregon. Oregon is, I guess, the highest ranked one-loss team at
Hmm.
number 6, and they've got them ahead of Texas, which I thought was really interesting because most people are saying that Texas had the best win of the season going into Tuscaloosa and handily
Hmm.
beating Alabama. So that
Hmm.
was interesting. And then I also found it interesting. Texas is 2 spots above Oklahoma when they lost to them head to head. I would think that head to head should
Yeah.
be the ultimate indicator, ranking wise, until they play again, if they play again in
Right.
the Big 12 championship game. But there's no way, in my estimation, you got 2 7-1 teams, one beat the other. Team X beat Team Y. Team Y should
Hmm.
not be ranked ahead of Team X. That's just my take.
Hmm.
I guess I'm
I
a
agree.
simple man. But
I agree. I
yeah.
agree. And I don't know how they get all. I don't know how. That's why I'm not on the committee, because I
Right,
don't know
right.
exactly how it works, how
Yeah.
what it comes down to. Because maybe they are looking play by play, like pound for pound kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in your same analogy, why should be winning? Why shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
less than X if Y won?
Right,
So
right.
um, yeah, it's still early, like we said, but it's
Oh yeah.
I I don't get some of the hierarchy things as well.
Yeah. And I think I complain about this every year. I think so, me being former military, I'm a big fan of standardization.
Mhm.
And I think that part of the reason that they don't do that is because they want guys like us to be sitting out here on all these shows and putting out the stuff on YouTube and debating their decisions and just bringing
Right,
attention and eyeballs to the sport of college football
right.
and to their moves in terms of how they order this thing. Not saying that they aren't legitimately attempting to get what they believe are the best teams in position to play for the championship. But I
Mhm.
think that they love the fact that, we're going to sit here and debate it and talk about it. Furthermore, if you
Right,
set a bunch of concrete rankings and say, listen, A, B, C, D, if these things happen, then this is how it
right,
shakes out, which
right,
I'm a big proponent of that. But,
right,
this is not the NFL, right?
right.
Um,
It is not.
yeah. So we got LSU Tigers. They're an interesting team. Very, very good offensively. Got a Heisman quarterback, Heisman Trophy contending quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and they are what, number 14 here. They're a 2-loss team.
Mhm,
So what I
mhm,
find interesting is we've never had a 2-loss team play in the college football playoff, right?
mm,
And this is the final year, obviously, of the 4-year thing. And we've never
mhm.
had a 2-loss team. But let's just say LSU runs the table and wins the SEC. I think they're going to get in as a 2-loss team just due to the amount of respect that the SEC garners with the committee, which
Mhm,
I'm not going to go into my I'm not going to get on my soapbox about that. But
mhm,
what do you think
mhm.
about that? Should LSU run the table? Should a 2-loss team be able to get in? Because in my estimation, a better 1-loss team is going to lose out if that happens.
Right, right. Well, they probably would get in. I think on that's a good point.
Yeah.
And winning the SEC championship. Now they might not get in. It's really going to depend what else happens too. Because
Can I put my
let's
conspiracy theory hat on here?
yep, do it.
I don't think there's any way, anyway, an SEC champion does not make the college football playoff. Why? Because it's broadcast by ESPN, and ESPN owns the SEC network.
Right.
There's,
But most of the
we,
time SEC champion is
yeah, no doubt.
usually up for
Yeah,
one of the best teams in the country.
yeah, no
You know
question,
what I
no
mean?
question, no question. But the other part of that, and this is something I've been paying attention to over the years, have you ever noticed how the SEC teams get positioned so that you have as many of them as high as you can so you can justify putting teams where you put them by saying, well, they beat all these ranked teams, blah, blah, blah. And all those teams are not always as good as they get ranked. Now, this is me being a conspiracy theorist again, but this is something that I've noticed over the years, and I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that, you know?
Mm, mm. Yeah, I gotta pay closer attention to it now. Because I guess
Right.
in my mind, I always just view it as what it is. And SEC
Hmm.
historically has always had great football.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just what it is.
Hmm.
And even in the years when SEC teams are down. For example, Alabama this year, LSU, is not the historic LSU that we've seen. Alabama's not the historic Alabama that we've seen.
Hmm.
They're still great teams.
Yeah,
You play them against any other team, let's say that's not in the SEC, and
you
they'll
got a real good
win. They'll
chance.
dominate. You know what I'm saying? They got a real, that's just what it is in my mind.
I let's see. I don't know if I buy into it to that level, but we're not gonna fall into the SEC versus the
To the
rest of
rabbit
college
hole.
football rabbit hole. Correct, correct. So you did mention Bama, so let's go ahead and talk about them. How dangerous is Alabama?
Hmm.
What is it? Reports of the demise are greatly exaggerated, or whatever that quote is. How dangerous is Alabama's?
I think you have to always assume that they're dangerous, right?
Hmm.
Now, obviously, this is not the Alabama that has been around that historically we're used to.
Right,
Being up there at the top four, thinking of undefeated season, all those kind of things.
right.
And that happens, right? Every team, it happens. Now they still have a chance to save, I guess, quote unquote, save the season. They got some big games. They got LSU coming up. That's going to be a huge game naturally. Um, but I think they're a good team. They're a good team, and I'm a big Nick Saban fan because I know, how I feel like I understand how he coaches and the perspective that he comes from. Um, but then it's still about the players making plays. And this year, the guys that are on offense and defense are not as strong as historically Alabama has been under Nick Saban.
Yeah, I think a big part of the difference, and that's a great point by you, but I think a big part of the difference is that they went through a run, maybe like a 6 to 8 year run of just pumping
Hmm.
out elite wideouts, elite wideouts,
Hmm.
elite wideouts.
Hmm.
And this year, obviously you got to be a certain level just to play for Alabama and start for them. But
Hmm.
this year their receiving core isn't quite the same as it was, right? I mean, think
Right,
about it.
right.
You've Amari Cooper to Calvin Ridley to Julio Jones and
Hmm.
what's my man's name? Jalen Waddle and
Hmm.
Jameson, like
Yeah.
just receiver after receiver. Devontae Smith, just
Yep.
elite receiver after elite receiver. Ruggs and we don't want to bring up Ruggs because we know what's the deal with
Yeah.
him, but
Right.
in general, just on the field, just playmaker after playmaker at the wide out position, and they don't really have that this year to kind of unlock the offense to the same
Hmm.
level. So I think that's something. But they had the early loss to Texas, and then the ugly win against, I think, South Florida the following week, and they've kind of rounded back into form, just doing what
Hmm.
Bama does. And I'm sure
Hmm.
Saban kind of likes flying under the radar this year, and he's playing the disrespect card and all that. Hey,
Hmm.
everybody thinks that Kirby and Georgia are the new hotness, and they've passed us up, and let's get to a position where we can play them in the SEC championship game and
Hmm.
and take our crown back as the kings of
And
this
see,
thing.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're still dangerous. Are they, to your point, like we said, the super dominant Bama teams of the past? Maybe not, but I think they're still
Hmm.
dangerous. Um,
Hmm.
all right, let's talk a little bit of coaches. This is interesting. We had a couple of coaches here.
Hmm.
Woo, three coaches. I'm gonna start with of course, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and Pat
Hmm.
Narduzzi from Pitt. And
Hmm.
both of them suffered tough losses, big losses over the weekend. Dion and Colorado got beaten pretty handily by UCLA, which oddly
Hmm.
enough, UCLA is so interesting now because Chip Kelly, who used to be an offensive guru, now has a dominant defensive team with UCLA.
Hmm.
I think that's pretty interesting how they've totally switched it up. I guess they
Right.
realized that they're not going to out recruit USC for offensive talent. So, they went to the other side of the ball, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So Shadur Sanders got sacked another 7 times this past game, and I
Mm.
think hit another 20 plus, and he is the most sacked quarterback in FBS. And
Hmm.
so obviously Deion Sanders was asked about that post game, and he gave commentary along the lines of basically we got to get new D linemen. I'm sorry, we got
Hmm.
to get new O linemen. and we're gonna get him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that in all my years of watching college football, I've ever heard a coach come out and say something like that
Mm-hmm.
openly. Like basically, you guys suck and you will be replaced after the season is
Mm-hmm.
over. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this: you've been there. How
Mm-hmm.
much of it is the offensive line plays terrible? How much of it is the coaching and allowing Shadur to sit back there and get killed? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I know that I don't have the O lineman to be able to protect to the level that I want to protect to let those deep routes downfield develop, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I got to do a whole lot of quick game to try and negate that and throw it off. How much of
Mm-hmm.
this is Shadur? How much of this is coaching? How much of this is the O line?
It's a combination of everything. I think the biggest thing is, which we've kind of talked about since the beginning of the season, when they first kind of got on their run, is going to be interesting how the season progresses
Mhm.
because they are lacking in on the offensive and defensive line. One thing that you can learn is that from skill positions are kind of interchangeable. You can play quarterback at, D1, D2, receivers, the skill guys, you can kind of bounce those around. The biggest difference is in the linemen. And I'm just using D1 and
Mhm.
D2 just for
No, I
different
got you.
teams and, conference
Yeah.
identity. Um, those big bodies are important. You need those big guys to open holes. You need those big guys to plug holes. You need those guys to make plays. And the game, theoretically, is one in the trenches. If you got a pass game, but your O line can't block, they can't pass. If you need to run the ball, but your O line can't open up holes, you can't run.
Mhm.
Defense, if you can't put pressure on the quarterback,
Right.
he's dipping all week. If you can't stop the run with the D line, they're getting 5 yards of carry. That's the first down on second down all game. You're not going to win that game. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
um, the big bodies is what they're missing, and Dion is being Dion, right? Prime is
Mhm.
going to call it like it is, and I think a lot of
Mhm.
people respect that, and a lot of people don't know how to handle that because not everyone does it. I've been a part of teams where you have heard the coaches, kind of say some stuff about the O line or say something about the receiver, and that receiver coach or that O line coach definitely use that as motivation of like, hey guys, we got to get it together. And I think that that's what their O line coach is going to be doing at Colorado. Now, they still got the same players, right? They're still going to be the same weight this next week. They're still going to have the same talent. So they are actively looking to build. Like Prime said a few weeks ago, this is the worst we're going to be.
Yeah.
So y'all go ahead and get on us now because
Mhm.
once we get some big bodies in there, imagine if they got Alabama's offensive line, or I wonder if they got any SEC offensive line
Yeah.
just size wise and put them up in Boulder, Colorado.
Mhm.
Different team, you know.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I feel on that.
Yeah, no, great point. So let's go over to the other side of the country. Pittsburgh Panthers, Pat Narduzzi, my Notre Dame Fighting Irish beat the brakes off Pitt. Always happy to see that. 58-7 this weekend. And when asked about it post game, Pat Narduzzi said something along the lines of, not an exact quote, but said something along the lines of, we lost a lot of players last year. We thought we did a good job replacing them, but apparently not. Now, in fairness to Pat Narduzzi, obviously you cut the hot part of the clip because that's going to get attention, but he also did say, we got to do a better job coaching, and you could put that all on me. So I want to make sure that I include that. But still, the point is, you have coaches that are coming out and making commentary about the players in a way that you've never heard before. And that was another one I thought was crazy, for him to say, we thought we did a good job replacing those players, but apparently not. That's like saying, man, we brought a bunch of bums in here, kind of same feelings on that you had with Dion, or what do you think there?
Yeah, yeah, same feelings. Players know. I like to assume that players believe in their coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the coach who, when you listen to the entire clip,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he did a very good job because I heard the
I thought
interview
so too.
myself, and I think that he did a good job taking
Mm-hmm.
ownership. Like I said, hey, it starts with me.
Yeah.
Um, that's number one. He's going to take ownership, but he's also going to take ownership in having people being held accountable.
Right.
And if he doesn't voice those things, no one gets held accountable. The coach
Mm-hmm.
can't just sit back all season and say, "Yep, this one's on me. Yep, this one's on me. Yep, this
Mm-hmm.
one's on me." O line, hey, yep, that one's on me. And
Right.
it's not on the coach. The coach isn't playing. The
Yeah.
coach has offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator who's calling
Mm-hmm.
the plays. Sometimes the head coach isn't calling the plays. He's just taking the ownership, right? So you got to put some stuff on the players. You got to have some ownership, and you got to have reasons to get people to buy in and make
Hmm.
changes. Because if you don't address them, they won't get changed.
Got you. Okay, so my final my final coach of the week really going hard. Man, Dabo Sweeney. Did you hear this one? Him
I
losing
did.
it on that. I'm not gonna say losing it, but him kind of going in on that caller who
Yeah.
basically was questioning his $11.5 million salary and the
Right.
fact that Clemson's got a 4-4 record this year.
Right.
What did you think about his response? He basically let him have it. Say, hey, people like you is what's wrong with things today. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you don't respect everything that we've built here. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Dabo fan. Like I've said that before, and I'm 100% on his side with this. I think the I'll call it arrogance and the disrespect by the caller to be speaking to the head coach of the program in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think was a bit much. Now I think everyone's entitled to an opinion, but
Yeah.
to question why he's making what he's making, Dabo did a great job of kind of giving him the same energy back and then
Mm-hmm.
finishing it with the facts. The facts are the facts. He's changed that program around. They're
That's
winning
true.
games. He's everything that he said. He was the lowest paid player, lowest paid coach.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's one of the highest paid coach. He wanted to do something and he does it. And one thing that I love what he said is, um, I haven't failed at some things, but I'm not a failure. Like everything that he's done, he's been
Mm-hmm.
successful. He wanted it.
Yeah.
He got it. He wanted to play football. He got a scholarship. He earned a scholarship at
Mm-hmm.
Alabama. One, he wanted to be a head coach. He became a head coach. He wanted to get
Mm-hmm.
married. He'd been married for a long time. So I think that is a strong stance. And if you say that Dabo has not been a great coach or hasn't done great things at Clemson, I say shame on you.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
Dabo has really made a difference where people didn't really know about Clemson.
Right.
They like the orange, they like the tiger, but they were thinking about other teams. They're not
Mm-hmm.
rank in the rank, but then Dabo went in there. They started winning games, started getting on college game day, started getting
Mm-hmm.
games on there, and people watching their entrance, how they come down. And it was like,
Right.
okay, okay. I think a lot of that was Dabo Sweeney, his coaching and
Mm-hmm.
doing what he could do for that program
Yeah, I think one of the good things that he mentioned was I think he said he had won 2 championships in 7 years,
in
and
seven
the only
years.
the only other two programs I can say that is Georgia and Alabama. So
Right.
definitely elite company there. So credit where credit is due. I'm not the biggest Dabo Sweeney fan. That's another story
Yeah.
for another day. But
Mm-hmm.
credit where it is due in terms of bringing Clemson back to top of the sport.
Right.
And I guess nothing stays at the top forever, right? I guess unless you're Saban. But for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
nothing stays at the top forever. And we'll see if he's able to rebuild this thing. You and I talked about it on previous episodes. A big part of his issue, I think, is he's anti-transfer portal and he's anti-NIL. So he's
Mm-hmm.
gonna have to get with that
Mm-hmm.
or lose a whole lot of recruits.
That's true.
Um, yeah, but I do think that one thing he kind of missed out on, he missed the boat on the fact that the reason the caller, right or wrong, was acting the way that he was acting should have been a
Mm-hmm.
point of flattery to Dabo, because that says
Mm-hmm.
you've built the program to this point that the expectations are far above what you're delivering here. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you don't meet those expectations, people are going to be upset with you. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that Dabo should have maybe looked at it from that angle. Like, I get everything
Right.
else he said, and everything he said was absolutely true. Can't argue with any of it. But maybe he should have looked at it from the opposite angle and said, I totally understand the reason why you're upset. We've built the standard here, and this year has been obviously a down year based on the the standard that we have tried to
Mm-hmm.
build here. And, we're going to do our best to get it back up to where we are competing for championships next year and going forward. Like, that's all he really
Mm-hmm.
needed to say instead of kind
Mm-hmm.
of going in on the guy, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And I think he probably felt a little attacked. And
mm-hmm,
that's probably what made him come back with that energy because I
yeah,
know that
yeah,
he's been attacked in interviews multiple times, but he would never, I don't know, never, but you could feel that it was not the coach kind of talking to.
mm-hmm,
That
mm-hmm,
was him, the man kind of saying, all right, let me turn up a little bit because you just
mm-hmm.
disrespected me and the work that I have done in this and what I've built for myself, his personal brand, his coaching career. Like you're kind of overlooking that at this point.
Right. And also, and this is the last thing I'll say about Dabo. Realistically, man, you making $11.5 million a year. You could probably buy and sell that caller, man. Don't let that dude get to you. You
Good
know what I
point.
mean?
It's a good point.
Yeah,
It's a good
keep it
point.
that simple. Keep it
That's
that
a good
simple.
point.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So we've gone through kind of the major storylines. As always, love your insight on those. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of the games from last week that you really found interesting. Normally I pick them, but this week I'll let you pick them. So I'm excited to hear which games really caught your attention. Go ahead and let's talk about those.
Yeah, just two really quick. Oregon and
Hmm.
Utah.
Of course, of
Oregon,
course.
Oregon won. I
Did
thought
they?
Utah was going to win. I thought Utah
Hmm.
was going to be able to perform or at least compete. And
Hmm.
based on the final score, it didn't look like there was any competition at all. I think they
Right.
lost 30. They scored one touchdown.
Hmm.
Missed the extra point. I don't even know what happened. I mean,
Two field goals. They
they
didn't get a
got.
touchdown. Matter of
Oh, that's
fact.
right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, the
That's
two
right.
field goals. Yeah.
Even worse. Even worse.
Yeah.
So when they've got the offense that they've got, so a little disappointed in that. Thought they're gonna have a better showing. Good news, liked Kansas and Oklahoma. Interesting to see Kansas win. I love when an underdog kind of comes through. And Kansas has been strong. They beat Illinois early. That was their second game of the season. That's probably how they've just got on a roll and just became such a great team because they beat Illinois. We'll never know. I like to think that that's probably what it's from.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that was cool to see Kansas beat Oklahoma. So those are really my two just kind of interesting games that really kind of stuck out for me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I think we know that Utah is extremely well coached. We know they're physical. They defend. They run the ball, etc. But I think that this time, we talk about styles making fights, and
Hmm.
they didn't have the style to be able to compete with Oregon. They're the same type of team, but Oregon's talent, I think, is more high end this year,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so it ended up being that Oregon just too much for them.
Yep.
So credit where credit is due, and I think also this win was it Utah was number 13 at the time. Well, they were number 13 now, I guess, but this
Yeah.
win uh helped contribute to the high opinion that the college football playoff committee has of Oregon. I think they went in
Hmm.
there hostile stadium and really, shut those guys down and played great. 35-6, man. That's a tough one. And I thought Oregon was gonna win. I didn't expect them to
Hmm.
body Utah like that.
Me
And
either.
the pig farmer, he turned back into a pumpkin. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but at the same time, and I know there are sometimes the talent just doesn't match up, and doesn't
Hmm.
matter how well you scheme or how well you execute. The talent in college a lot of time makes a difference.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. That's right.
and yeah, and the second game you mentioned was which one? I'm sorry.
Kansas. Kansas
Yeah.
beating Oklahoma,
So
which.
shocker, definitely a
Hmm.
shocker. And the funny
Hmm.
thing, I've been hearing about Lance Leipold, Kansas's head coach for a while now, saying he's a real bright, up and coming type guy.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay. So I'm watching this
Hmm.
game and I keep waiting for Oklahoma to explode. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, on
Y'all running out of
Oklahoma.
time.
Let's go, Sooners. Right. And um, this is not even one of those that I put on Oklahoma. I say all credit due to Kansas.
Hmm.
They really played well and did what they had to do, and that hurt Oklahoma. And realistically, since the Texas game, Oklahoma hasn't quite looked the same. Their defense is giving up a lot more in terms of yards, in terms of points.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
not looking as good as they looked earlier in the season. We'll see if Brent Venables can get it back on track. But again, I think if they finish strong and end up winning the Big 12, which is going to be a tall order because they will likely play Texas in a rematch in the Big 12 championship game. So,
Right.
you know, if they could end up beating Texas twice and winning that conference championship, they'll be in the playoff, I think.
Hmm.
Now, who they could beat in the playoff, again, very interesting. This,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, gotta love college football, man. That's why we're
It's
here.
the best. It's the
Yeah,
best.
yeah, it really is. I don't like everything about it, but it really is exciting just because there's
Hmm.
so many variables.
So many variables.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think, yeah, all credit due to Kansas. I think they played really well. They're continuing to play well. I'm just curious to see if Lance Leipold um stays at Kansas or if somebody like a Michigan State or somebody ends up throwing them a boatload of cash to go there and rebuild their program. So see, we will see. Okay. Any games you're looking forward to this weekend coming up, or just gonna
This,
kind of sit back and
yeah,
enjoy it?
this week, gonna sit back. Georgia, Missouri. Interested to see that
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
just because Georgia's rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the college football rankings are out,
Mm-hmm.
there's everyone's seen them, everyone's talking about them. Now all
Right.
eyes are on you.
Mm-hmm.
And for a team like Missouri, who's sitting at 12,
Yeah.
this is a huge game.
Huge game.
There's a lot of excitement in there. Again, they're like, okay, this is a team who's won the national championship and who is
Mm-hmm.
currently competing for the national championship. We
Yeah.
go in here, we could have with good showing. That's a good chance for us. The
Right.
seniors, anyone who's playing, they're like, look, I get some good film on Georgia. This could be it. So it's gonna be. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see that. And then
These
of course
guys.
Alabama and LSU at night.
Right. Right.
That'll be good to watch too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Georgia hasn't lost a game. I heard it today since 2021. Like that's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy. And this
Wow.
Georgia team is not as good as those Georgia teams, but they're still really
Mm-hmm.
good. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of cool to see, we both live in Jacksonville, Florida here. It's kind of cool to see Jacksonville's own Carson Beck, quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs, really playing well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, covering him when he was in high school, Mandarin High School. So
That's cool.
really good. Yeah, I didn't think that he was going to turn into this. I really didn't. But
That's awesome.
hey, yeah, congrats
He's
to
here.
him. Yeah, he's here. Absolutely.
He's here now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So yeah, this week definitely that um was that Georgia, Missouri, Eli Drinkowitz
Yeah.
really has the Tigers playing well. I'll tell you what's going to be another one. And the Sooners got to be real careful here. Bedlam, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the
Mm-hmm.
name. The running back for Oklahoma State, I think he's been over 200 yards in like his last 3 games. Like the kid is killing right now. And so
Wow.
yeah, he's let's see. Ollie Gordon. There we go.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so he's got 141 carries and 1,087 yards on the season. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah, he's going insane. He's going insane.
That's
So
awesome.
Brent Venables is spending a tremendous amount of time prepping the run defense here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what's sad about that. Quick note is that this is the last time for the foreseeable future that Bedlam is going to be played, with Oklahoma now moving into the SEC. So that's a tough one. I'm
Yeah.
surprised
Yeah.
they didn't negotiate to try to keep that game on their schedule, but I guess everyone doesn't necessarily have that power. But yeah, definitely some good games this weekend. Um, Colorado's going to have another tough one. They got to deal with Oregon State. I don't
Yeah.
know how they're going to be able to stop the run, like we talked about.
Yeah.
They're weak in the defensive
Mm-hmm.
line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Washington and USC.
That'll be good.
Yeah, and that's in
That should be
Seattle.
good. That
I
should be
don't know if
good.
it's. I think you want to see the quarterback matchup, but just the way USC is playing lately, I think Washington is very capable of lighting them guys up if they get it rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
we've
Mm-hmm.
seen what Washington can do. But yeah, it definitely got
Mm-hmm.
some good games on the slate this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
man. Looking forward to that. But Ryan, I'm gonna let you go, man. As always, great thoughts from you on the sport. You got anything to add before I let you get out of here?
No, man, I'm good. Glad to do it again. I appreciate you.
All right, man. Well, we will catch up next week. Sit back, enjoy the games, enjoy that bedlam. And by the way, I did not hear you mention Notre Dame at Clemson. Now Clemson is 4-4, but I tell you what, they still got athletes. And believe me, Dabo will have those guys remembering the butt whooping we put on them in South Bend last year. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
so I
Oh
think
yeah,
that
they
game's
will.
going to be a little more difficult than Irish fans would like to think it'll be. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you get your weekend started with that at noon on Saturday. There you go. That's my
I'll be
take.
locked in. I'll be locked in.
All right, my brother, you have a good one, man. And for all of you listening and watching, please, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. Appreciate you. We'll be back for the next episode, and we're out. Peace.